Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so thrilled to have you here today because we're jumping into a wildly fascinating dive into the multi-era evolution of, well, one of the most influential figures of our lifetime, Mark Zuckerberg. Whether you see him as this visionary tech pioneer or a deeply polarizing power broker, there's absolutely no denying that his life story is completely unprecedented. So let's just get right into it and trace the ultimate pipeline from a cramped college dorm room to the absolute peak of global influence.
Honestly, the sheer scale of the transformation we're looking at today is just staggering. On one hand, you've got the 2004 version, right? A 19-year-old Harvard dropout rocking that standard grade t-shirt, literally hacking together a college student directory called the Facebook. Now, fast forward to 2026, and the picture couldn't be more different. We're talking about a 41-year-old guy with a net worth hovering right around $251 billion. That makes him the third richest person on the entire planet. He's fighting in mixed martial arts, cruising the globe in a $300 million mega yacht, and operating as a massive geopolitical force. So the big question is, how on earth did we get from point A to point B? Well, that brings us to Section 1, the hacker origins. Let's look at his early life and coding. You know, what's really wild is just how early his whole identity as a programmer was forged. Long before he ever stepped foot on Harvard's campus, at just 11 years old, Zuckerberg built ZuckNet. It was basically a digital communication program linking his house to his dad's dental practice. By the time he got to Harvard in 2002, he already had this massive reputation as a coding prodigy. He quickly whipped up CourseMatch to help students pick their classes. And then, of course, the infamous FaceMash in 2003. Now, FaceMash is actually a really critical milestone. Why? Because he coded the whole thing over a single weekend, and it got so overwhelmingly popular so fast that it literally crashed one of Harvard's network switches. That intense, rapid-fire building phase is exactly what culminated in the February 2004 launch of the Facebook. And really, this whole era was defined by one absolutely crucial motto: it's okay to break things to make them better. This is the ultimate hacker philosophy. In those early days, Facebook actually held these intense hackathons to encourage their staff to build entirely new projects in just a single night. This whole ethos of, moving fast, pushing the boundaries, and just dealing with the consequences later, it worked absolute wonders for writing code and scaling software. But as we're going to see a bit later, applying that exact same break things mentality to the real world, to actual human relationships in global societies, well, that would eventually cause some massive friction. Which leads perfectly into Section 2, building the empire and scaling to billions. So that hacker philosophy directly fueled the transition from what was just a single website into a consolidated global empire under the Meta umbrella. See, Zuckerberg didn't just want to grow Facebook. He recognized potential existential threats, and he just bought them. The acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp were absolute masterstrokes in consolidating global communication. Plus, he pushed the company heavily into mobile tech exactly when smartphones were taking over our lives. But he didn't just own these separate apps. He systematically merged their back-end chat systems, basically tying billions of users together. And then, looking way past mobile, he started aggressively sinking billions of dollars into Quest headsets and virtual reality, placing a huge bet on a spatial computing future. To really wrap your head around the ambition here, you just have to look at this number: 5 billion. Back in 2013, Zuckerberg launched an initiative with this staggering goal to connect the 5 billion people on Earth who didn't even have internet access yet. Now, sure, the initiative faced some heavy pushback over things like net neutrality, but the sheer audacity of that goal really highlights why this empire impacts you, me, and literally everyone we know. He wasn't just building a company for a specific demographic, he was trying to build a platform for the entire human species. But growth at that scale comes with a cost. Section 3, lawsuits and controversies, focusing on the legal friction. See, that friction started almost immediately. Within days of Facebook going live, the Winklevoss twins and Divya Narendra accused Zuckerberg of stringing them along on their own project, Harvard Connection, while he secretly went off and built a competitor. This sparked years of intense legal battles, which ultimately ended in a massive settlement: 1.2 million Facebook shares and $20 million in cold, hard cash. This was really the first major red flag that Zuckerberg's fast-moving break things style was going to have some very real, very complex legal consequences. And this friction wasn't just limited to the digital world. It slammed right into deep historical roots in the real world, too. Case in point, Hawaii. Zuckerberg bought up massive tracts of land there to build this sprawling 1,450-acre retreat. But to consolidate his ownership, he filed these quiet title lawsuits against hundreds of native Hawaiians who owned small historical pockets of land right inside his estate. Well, the public backlash was fierce. People were calling it neo-colonialism. He was eventually forced to back down and drop the lawsuits, publicly admitting that he just moved ahead without taking the time to actually understand the local history and the legal processes. He tried to move fast through generations of complex Hawaiian land law, and the system pushed right back. Eventually, this friction escalated to the absolute highest levels of government. Over the past several years, Zuckerberg has become a regular fixture before the U.S. Congress, facing intense scrutiny from both sides of the political aisle. I mean, we saw it in 2018 with his marathon testimony over the whole Cambridge Analytica data scandal. We saw it again in 2020 with subpoenas over content moderation in Section 230. And then in 2024, during a highly publicized Senate hearing, he actually stood up, turned around, and publicly apologized to families whose children had been harmed by online abuse. All the while, state lawsuits just keep rolling in, challenging Meta on everything from teen mental health to the rollout of their AI bots. It's pretty clear that the move fast era had firmly transitioned into the accountability era. Now let's shift gears to Section 4, philanthrocapitalism, and how he's deploying all that wealth. Back in 2010, Zuckerberg pledged $100 million to the Newark public school system in New Jersey. Naturally, it was a massive, headline-grabbing donation. But you know what's really interesting here? The timing. This massive charitable act dropped right around the exact same time as the release of The Social Network. You know, that Hollywood movie that painted a pretty ruthless, highly negative portrait of him? Critics immediately started asking, wait, is this donation just PR cover? Zuckerberg insisted he actually wanted the gift to be completely anonymous to avoid that exact comparison, but local politicians apparently talked him into going public with it. But the really crucial point about his immense wealth is the unique machinery he built to actually give it away. In 2015, Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, pledged 99% of their Facebook shares to the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative. But here's the catch. Instead of setting it up as a traditional nonprofit foundation, they structured it as an LLC. And this right here is the absolute essence of philanthrocapitalism. An LLC structure means they can give money to charity, sure, but it also allows them to retain total control, invest in for-profit companies, commercialize scientific research, and even make political donations. It's basically philanthropy, but executed with the tactical, calculated control of a tech startup. Which brings us to Section 5, Politics and Power, looking at his political evolution. All that immense wealth and influence has fueled a seriously fascinating political evolution. Back in his 20s and early 30s, Zuckerberg was very visibly backing progressive causes. He formed a lobbying group called FWDS for immigration reform, he marched in pride parades, and he was very vocal internally at Facebook defending Black Lives Matter. But as we get closer to 2024, his stance visibly shifted. He started limiting employee activism in the workplace. He even sent a formal letter to Congress saying he regretted bowing to pressure from the Biden administration regarding COVID-19 content moderation. Privately, reports suggest he now aligns much closer with classical liberalism or libertarianism. And that shifting stance brings us squarely into the present day. In 2025 and 2026, Zuckerberg has been actively navigating a totally new political landscape by really working to mend fences with the Trump administration. We're talking highly publicized dinners at Mar-a-Lago, major corporate donations to aligned funds, and even accepting a seat on the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. He's also come out publicly stating his intent to work hand-in-hand with the U.S. administration to push back against foreign regulatory pressures, especially those coming from the European Union. It's a very clear, hard tilt toward prioritizing American tech dominance. And finally, Section 6, the modern rebrand. Let's look at his totally new aesthetic. Today, that old dorm room nerd persona, yeah, that is thoroughly retired. The modern Mark Zuckerberg has undergone a complete physical and aesthetic transformation. He's deeply into extreme sports now. We're talking earning actual medals in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and doing intense MMA training. That iconic humble gray t-shirt is long gone, swapped out for trendy streetwear, longer hair, and some pretty prominent gold chains. And his lifestyle has completely scaled up to match that net worth. He bought a $170 million estate in Florida's ultra-exclusive Billionaire's Bunker and picked up a jaw-dropping $300 million mega yacht called Launchpad. Honestly, the yacht is so big it actually sails with its own separate support vessel just to handle the logistics. So, from a cramped Harvard dorm room to high stakes congressional hearings, all the way to geopolitical maneuvering on the deck of a mega yacht, the evolution is just undeniable. Which leaves us with this one final lingering thought. After 2 full decades of living by the hacker motto to move fast and break things, is Mark Zuckerberg still breaking things, or has he finally built the world exactly the way he wants it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.